Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 6, 2023 Public Board Meeting of the Halton District School Board. I will begin the meeting with the roll call. Trustee Rocha.
Here.
Trustee Bryden.
Present.
Trustee Shuttleworth.
I'm here.
Vice Chair Oliver.
Good evening.
Trustee Baxter.
Present.
Trustee Amos. Yes, here. Good evening. And Trustee Ahmed.
Good evening.
Good evening. I know that Trustee Daniele is about to enter the room and that Trustee Zhang will be joining us shortly, as will Trustee Gray. Trustee Amos, would you make a motion to go into committee of the whole private session respecting property matters?
Yes, please.
And Trustee Ahmed, would you second that motion?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Are there any objections to moving to private session? Seeing none, the motion is passed by unanimous consent and we are now in private session. Vice Chair Oliver, the floor is yours. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 6, 2023 Public Board Meeting of the Halton District School Board. I would like to extend a special welcome to our guests, both in person and online. Thank you for your interest in the Halton District School Board. I'd like to make a note about the timing of our public session. We will be looking at a motion to change the start time of public session to 6 p.m. in January, with our private session occurring after public session. This will not take effect until after trustees have voted on it. So this may or may not actually happen, but it would be effective February 2024. And I'm making this announcement early because we don't want anyone to be coming at 7 o'clock for a meeting if it starts at 6 and therefore missing the first hour. So roll call. Trustees are present both in person and online. Joining us in person this evening are trustees Ahmed, Amos, Bryden, Collard, Daniele, Gray, Oliver, Rocha, and Zhang, as well as student trustees Shribalan and Limzanov, and trustee Baxter is joining us online. Director Ennis, would you please let us know which staff are in attendance this evening?
Thank you so much, Chair Collard. Tonight we have a full slate of superintendents and senior staff here to support tonight's meeting.
Tonight, trustee Zhang will be honoring the land. He left the room.
Let's get Shrina maybe.
Shrina, would you like to honor the land this evening? Okay. Trustee Shribalan will be doing that this evening.
Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis, from the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, water, plants, animals, ancestors that walk before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you very much, Trustee Shribalan. Now we move up to approval of the agenda. Trustee Rocha, would you make a motion to approve the agenda?
I would.
Thank you. Trustee Bryden, would you second this motion?
Yes.
Is there any discussion regarding approval of the agenda? Are there any objections to approving the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved by unanimous consent. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest for this evening's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to the Inspire Awards, item 2.1, and I will pass the gavel to Trustees Gray and Ahmed, the co-chairs of the Inspire Awards, to preside over this evening's award.
Thank you so much. An Inspire Award is given to an individual or a group that is formally or informally associated with the Halton District School Board, who support our students and their achievements through exemplary caring, initiative, innovation, and creativity. Tonight, we have a group of individuals that will be honored, and it's my pleasure to introduce them, and I would ask Trustee Collard to join the group at the front. We have Jeff and Stephen, Tracy, Kirsten, St. Germain, and Vanessa. The staff in class 54 at Frontenac Public School consistently go above and beyond for students, as evident in the smiles on the students' faces. They invest the time in understanding each child's individual needs to optimize their learning experience, and they also prioritize reassuring parents during the day. Demonstrating remarkable initiative, the staff organizes an annual class restaurant where the children take charge of everything from crafting the menu to preparing the food. This hands-on experience allows parents to be served by their children and creates a truly incredible and memorable event. In terms of innovation and creativity, the staff took a unique approach to the school's holiday play by filming a movie tailored to each student's abilities. The roles were designed to showcase the personality and strengths of each child, whether verbal or nonverbal. This personalized and inclusive approach not only highlighted the creativity of the staff, but also ensures that every child's abilities shine through. As a result, Mr. A and his team in class 54 have earned a reputation as the best of the best. Congratulations. And we welcome all photographers to come to the front and also to join with this group. You're welcome. Thank you very much, and congratulations to the teachers and elementary assistants from Class 54 at Frontenac Public School. Also receiving an Inspire Award this month and being presented at their school will be Jennifer Minstrel, being presented at Odenawi by Trustee Amos, and also Laura Faint, being presented at Mohawk Gardens by Chair Collard. I understand that Stephanie Clapham from MM Robinson has already received her award by Trustee Zhang. So congratulations to those other individuals receiving an Inspire Award this month. I'd like to add that a special thanks goes to Susan Thrasher in the Director's Office and members of the communications team who work so hard every month to ensure that trustees have all they need to assess nominees. For everyone watching this evening, please continue to nominate people or organizations who support our students and their achievements through exemplary caring, initiative, innovation, and creativity. Everyone in the HDSB community can nominate or be nominated: families, neighbors, related organizations, staff, students, and volunteers. All nominations are gratefully received by the trustees. So keep those nominations coming, and congratulations once again to everyone mentioned as an award winner this evening here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Trustee Gray. Next on our agenda is the Student Trustee Report, and I would like to ask Trustee Sherbalin and the Limzanov to present your report.
Awesome. So good evening to all trustees, staff, parents, and students. It's a great pleasure to see all of you today. And for all those watching in the live stream, thank you for tuning in. Busy couple of weeks we had, and we're excited to present all of our awesome updates. Starting off with the updates on the Student Senates. Last night, Trustee Shaban and I led the third meeting of the HTSB Student Senate in New Street Education Center. In connection to our theme of equitable wellness, we had awesome conversations on the topic and had two guest speakers present, being Assistant Principal Walker and our very own Superintendent Barnes, both of whom have shared their insights into what the board is doing with respect to promoting student well-being. Furthermore, we have passed 3 motions, including Senate tangible guidelines, Senator outreach strategies, and multi-year plan goal setting for our subcommittees. Lastly, our Oakville subdivision of the Senate has presented their organization of a new project called the Halton Connects. In essence, it's a monthly student-run newsletter for Halton students to learn about resources, volunteer opportunities, workshops, and more.
With that, Trustee Alimzanov and I are pleased to announce an additional Senate opportunity available to all grades 7 to 12 HTSB students. On Friday, December 1st, students as well as their families received a letter inviting all of said students, not just senators, to apply to join the Student Senate subcommittees as external representatives. For those unfamiliar, these Senate subcommittees are based on the 2020 to 2024 multi-year plan and thus consist of 5 Senate subcommittees in equity and inclusion, mental health and well-being, environmental leadership, learning and achievement, as well as Indigenous perspective and awareness. The Senate executive will be selecting 4 students, 2 from elementary and 2 from secondary, from each region, that being Burlington, Halton Hills, Milton, and Oakville, a variety of lived experiences for each of the 5 Senate subcommittees. The purpose of these subcommittees is to work collaboratively to carry out the student Senate goals. Usually these are challenges, problems, or difficulties that our students face in our schools. Applications will close on December 20th at 11:59 p.m. and again are available to all students in grades 7 to 12, not just senators. For those tuning in online or keen on how to apply, please check the email received to your student accounts on December 1st, as well as the HTSB Student Senate Instagram for the application link. Trustee Alimjanov and I couldn't stress more our wish for as many students across the board of a variety of lived experiences to apply. Even if you're new to student leadership and advocacy, the 2 of us have grown so much through these subcommittees and will love to engage more students of diverse experiences in these vital works subcommittee members do for students across the board.
Continuing with the theme of Senates, we had our introduction meeting for our executive team, assigning responsibilities, etc. However, the main highlight was introducing Mark Clare, the CEO of the Halton Learning Foundation, to them. Mark gave a very insightful presentation and really planted that seed for future cooperation with the organization of HLF Month. Moreover, we're very happy to say that there have actually been a few senators and other students who were already involved in the process of organizing events within their schools to support HLF without any direct contact with us or Mark. So we definitely see already a huge growth in popularity of the foundation this year, which is perfect considering all the great work that they do.
Your student trustees have kept busy outside the Senate as well. On November 24th, Trustee Alamjanov and I met with the board's fantastic communications team, namely Jason Meisner and Summer Sweetman, and were fortunate enough to film 2 videos regarding the Inspire Awards and the Human Rights Symposium right in this boardroom. Both Trustee Alamjanov and I are so honored to facilitate such vital conversations regarding the Human Rights Symposium student-led holistic health panel, as well as the recognition of students and staff across the board through the Inspire Awards, which we've already seen some of tonight. Huge thanks to Summer and Jason for their support on these projects, as well as Trustee Gay for supporting the involvement of us in the Inspire Awards video. We can't wait for the student body to be reminded of these crucial opportunities within our board for recognition and human rights learning.
Moving on, touching briefly with what Trustee Shabana said, the Human Rights Symposium, it's next Monday from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. on the theme of equitable wellness, so make sure to tune in. We will have an excellent and diverse group of students panelists answering a variety of questions. I won't spoil the surprise of who they are, though. You will get to meet them soon. However, what I will say is that Trustee Shabana and I, like Trustee Shabana mentioned, will be honored to be moderating the discussion, and Director Ennis and Chair Collard will also be giving their remarks. We will also be having a series of follow-up activities organized by the Student Equity Committee, which all classes will be responsible for running. And we are definitely excited to see all of it unfold.
With that, Trustee Alimjanov and I attended the Ontario Student Trustees Association public cabinet meeting on Wednesday, November 29th, as per our respective roles with the cabinets on the Public Education Interest Group. The meeting discussed OBSPA Advocacy Day, the school year's first ever Public General Assembly internal report, which Trustee Alimjanov and I are involved in the writing of, the necessity of engaging student trustees in rural boards, the OBSPA Student Trustee Scholarship, and the Public Education Symposium. For some personal updates, Trustee Alimjanov has reached out to all the student trustees of the Golden Horseshoe region to learn about what their initiatives they are working on and share common themes in his section of the Public General Assembly internal report, so shout out to him. With that, on November 27th, I was very fortunate to head down to Queen's Park to partake in OPSPA advocacy as one of 3 student trustee representatives alongside trustees from across the province, including some of our very own, as well as MPPs across the province. It was a true honor to represent Halton in discussions with our province's decision makers on the issues impacting students most, from trustee governance to transportations and rural boards, and so much more. A little tidbit to share is how proud I am to hear from many trustees and senior staffs, past colleagues and current, who all had nothing but amazing things to say about the outstanding leaders we have in the HDSP. Alongside that, I was able to again speak to Minister Lecce, as well as OPSPA Executive Director Stephanie Donaldson, regarding the HDSP Student Artificial Intelligence report that they were keen on following up on, as well as exploring the potential for collaboration. I couldn't be prouder to see student voices be at the forefront of educational conversation, and I extend my deepest gratitude to Trustee Daniele and Trustee Gray, who ensured I was comfortable throughout the process, and OPSPA Director of Policy Jennifer McIntyre, who made my attendance possible.
First of all, big shout out to Trustee Sherballen for all the great work that she does. But moving on, the first the first meeting of the Junior Council is actually, that's something else is coming up. As we stated previously, it's a new student representative body for K-5 and K-6 schools who will be having their first meeting ever in the Surrey boardroom next Wednesday. We have organized great activities for them with our subcommittee chairs in the format of a gallery walk around this room. In all parts of this room. And we also hope to gain that valuable student perspective on board issues that hasn't really been heard before.
Very well put. Lastly, Trustee Alamjanov and I had the honor of attending the first ever Mental Health and Wellbeing Student Advisory Committee meeting on December 23rd. The team is off to a great start working with staff advisors like Ms. Bate and Ms. Patello to ensure the student perspective is reflected in all mental health policies within the HDSB. Huge shout out to Judy Wang and Sienna Su, the committee's chair, for all their hard work to put this together. And with that, another one of our student trustee reports come to a close. Thanks to all staff and trustees that supported our endeavors, and we can't wait to come back to you with more exciting advocacy updates in the new year.
Thank you very much for your report this evening. I am not seeing any trustees on the speakers list, so I just wanted to commend you on giving yet again a very fulsome, very detailed, and very busy report. I don't know where you're finding time to do your schoolwork, but I know that you are. Moving on, we will go into the consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Trustee Gray, seconded by Trustee Daniele. The items that we have in the consent agenda this evening for approval include the minutes of our last meeting, and on receipt, the order paper, the board report schedule, the policy and governance procedure review schedule, the administrative procedure review schedule, the approved minutes of committee of the whole, and correspondence from other school boards. Are there any items that need to be pulled this evening? Seeing none, is there any discussion regarding acceptance of this motion? Seeing none, this motion is approved by unanimous consent. Next, we move up to item 4, ratification action, and we have, I believe, a couple of items to approve private session.
Yes, through you, Chair. I have a motion here. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve matters from private session respecting personnel matters and property matters report 23186. And I so move.
And I will look to Trustee Amos to second that.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions regarding this motion? Seeing none, please cast your votes. Thank you very much. That passes unanimously. I would now like to call up Superintendent Taha to speak to Report 23181, Respectful Workplace Policy. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, trustees, senior team, members of the public in the gallery and on the live stream. Before you is a recommendation to approve the revised respectful workplace policy. These revisions were informed by staff consultation with the HDSP community, as well as discussions with this board at a variety of forums and times. It is our feeling that the revised policy is a robust and strong one. The revisions uphold the essence of this policy, specifically civility and respect and professionalism in the workplace, while at the same time reinforce the expectations that staff demonstrate through personal conduct and presentation, regard for public education, colleagues, and each student, which is underscored in a revised policy statement that is included in the policy. And with that, I'm happy to take any of your questions.
Trustee Zhang.
Thank you. The respectful workplace policy was presented to the board 3 times before this meeting. And they are presented. The policy draft was presented on October 4th, October 11th, and November 22nd. The November 22nd version had a big change to the previous draft presented to the board, almost rewritten the entire policy. So let's first to see what has been changed. So in the latest one with today's policy for decision. So in the legal reference, 3 important references have been removed. The first one is Ontario College Teachers Act. The second one is Ontario Regulation Professional Misconduct. The third one is Supreme Court of Canada Ross versus New Brunswick School District. This is a case. OCT Act authorized Ontario College of Teachers, the regulatory body, the status as a governing institution that can set industry business conduct rules and standards. Professional misconduct is a regulation under the OCT Act that provides detailed explanations with to what professional misconduct really mean. That's in the teaching practice. And the third one, Ross versus New Brunswick School District, is an excellent example to show what the responsibility of a school board employee during off-duty time. It clarified the school board's responsibility in handling such cases with applicable options we can do. So after removing these legal references, a direct consequence is that the OCT reference standards of practice for the teaching profession has been removed accordingly. All the policies should set the goals and the standards for administrative procedure under the policy. Comparing today's policy for decision and the first draft presented on October 4th, standards were gone. So it makes the policy less meaningful. And the first 2 presentations of this draft policy were on Inside Halton, the local news. So
Trustee Zhang, you've used your entire 3 minutes. Is there a question?
So the question is, I suggest to defer this and or bring back to the October 4th.
Are you making a motion to defer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm looking for a seconder to defer this motion. I'm sorry, and there will be no motion to defer at this time. You may go back on the speakers list if you wish. There are no other trustees on the speakers list at this point.
This one? Yeah.
You may go ahead, Trustee Zhang.
Okay, so just look at our local news. So it's the local news. So Inside Halton report did this the previous meeting twice. So for the first one, it's considered this is a dress code. This is the first news. Consider this policy is for dress code. And this is the second news. Consider our policy is professionalism policy. So this is the local news reflect the community's expectation and their understanding to the work we are doing. So if at the beginning of this year, so we had a motion passed to have let the board have a professionalism policy, and we vote down this motion, and we canceled that motion. At that time, the board made a commitment to improve one motion to include professionalism policy. But now we can compare these two to the first draft and today's motion. All the professionalism content were removed from the draft. That means we didn't fulfill our commitment. Thank you.
Superintendent Taha, would you like to respond?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, to Trustee Zhang, trustees. First and foremost, I appreciate your comments, and also I appreciate your commitment to ensuring that our policies are strong and robust and capture their intent and the feedback that we have received. What I can say is that obviously you are correct. There has been a couple or multiple versions of this policy that we had presented and deliberated, and this is the nature of this body, a deliberative body. The consensus, or the common ground that we've reached in those discussions is that this policy applies to all employees, not strictly teachers. Obviously, teachers are at the center of our business and they deliver instructions to our students, but this organization, this public institution, employs education workers that come from a variety of professions and crafts and practices. And so having that reference to the Ontario College of Teachers, while not necessarily unimportant, it may dilute the essence of this policy and the fact that it's applicable to all employees. The good news, however, is that the lack of reference to the Ontario College of Teachers does not in any way prevent us from relying on that regulatory body to respond to any misconduct. Ultimately, the HDSV is a self-governing, autonomous institution. We pass our own policies, the Board of Trustees pass their own policies, and the other regulatory bodies augment those policies. They're a companion policy, if you will. So while I understand your perspective that, the policy may omit those references, but those omissions were with the understanding that this policy applies to all employees, not teachers alone. Also, the other point to mention is that professional standards speak to more than civility and respect in the workplace. They actually speak to components of the craft that are technical in nature. So, for example, the Ontario College of Teachers professional standards speak to class management skills, pedagogy, your knowledge of the profession, whether you are keeping yourself up to date with respect to the latest and most recent literature with respect to education. So it goes beyond simply the conduct in the classroom. That's a small piece of it. The thinking with this final draft is that while professionalism is at the core of it, from a behavior perspective, singling out a particular regulatory body would really send the wrong message in our view. But again, the bottom line is whether the OCT is referenced in this policy or not, it doesn't in any way prevent us from relying on the OCT standards of practice or ethical standards of practice. We do that all the time. So I do appreciate your comment, but I don't believe that the policy has been in any way compromised by omitting those references.
You've run out of time, I'm sorry, and we do have another speaker. Trustee Rocha.
Yep, through you, Chair, and perhaps to Trustee Zhang. So back in September, when a professionalism policy was presented to the board, the trustees unanimously voted it down, knowing that, in the belief that we did not need a professionalism policy. The ask was to, as policies came up for review, we would look at strengthening language. And I think that's what Superintendent Taha has done with the respectful workplace policy, is he's strengthened language. And this is a policy that's been in place for several years, so not new. And then with reference to the newspaper you quoted, I believe, and maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but we did ask them to retract the title of that article because it was misleading and incorrect. So I'm not sure what version you're looking at, but we did, the board did ask them to change it because they were reporting information incorrectly. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. I see no other, I see Trustee Zhang back on the speakers list.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So first, I want to say in the hospital. So let's see a hospital. Hospital has nurses and doctors. So they had license issued by the different regulatory bodies. So if the hospital, they have the professionalism policy. Actually, they can include all these standards, and each standard they have an applicable condition. So the doctors' standards only applicable for doctors. Nurses' standards only applicable for nurses. So it's not an issue. So for the organization policy to include the different policies from another regulatory body, even the Education Act, it does not. We use Education Act a lot. So Education Act does not apply to everyone here. So that's why we can include that. It's not an issue. And another one is I want to say last year, if you remember, the National Post, I believe it is a news. So OCT sent the ministry a letter. So said we can, the school board can use the OCT existing rules to handle certain situation. But do we really use those rules? So that's the question. Thank you.
Through you, Trustee, Chair Caller to Trustee Zhang, the answer to your question is yes, we do use those rules.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, I'm going to put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the respectful workplace policy appended to this report. And I would be seeking Trustee Shuttleworth to move that motion and Trustee Rocha to second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, I'm putting the motion on the machine. Please cast your votes. Thank you. That motion passes. It is not unanimous. Trustee Zhang has voted against, and all other trustees have voted in favor. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is Notification Protocol Report 23182, submitted by the Notification Protocol Ad Hoc Committee. Would you like to speak to this, superintendent. Boy, I'm giving you all kinds
That's
of
okay.
promotions.
That's good.
Trustee Shuttleworth.
Yeah, thank you very much. Through you, Chair, to the Board of Trustees. First off, I'd just like to thank the committee, which consisted of Vice Chair Oliver, Trustee Amos, Trustee Gray, and our visitor, Trustee Rocha, who came to help as well. This is kind of the second go at this. We came to the board, I think that was in May, and realized that maybe we weren't aligned and focused enough on what we wanted to do. So we took it back. We've had lots of discussions. And in looking at the motions, what we've done is we divided different events sort of into two different categories, either under the HDSB's purview or the community. And we have given suggestions as to what we are hoping can be a new way forward to ensure that trustees are either invited to events of interest and recognized at events when other local officials are invited. So you've had a chance, hopefully, to look through this report. We have put put forward two following motions to come from this, which are, be it resolved that the Director of Education share an invitation protocol document with all HDSB principals and members of the senior administration at the beginning of the school year to ensure appropriate invitations are considered for all HDSB and school-specific events. So that's to cover the school board-wide events. And then we also have, be it further resolved, that the chair share motion M22-0154, along with the accompanying protocol suggestions with municipally elected officials and their staff to bring to their attention opportunities for joint participation in community-based events that would benefit from the inclusion of the local school board trustee. And that's to cover community-wide events. And I'm happy to take any questions on behalf of our committee if anybody has any.
I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to reread what you just read. Be it resolved that the Director of Education share an invitation protocol document with all HDSB principals and members of senior administration at the beginning of the school year to ensure appropriate invitations are considered for all HDSB and school-specific events. Be it further resolved that the chair share motion M22-0152, along with the accompanying protocol suggestions with municipally elected officials and their staff to bring to their attention opportunities for joint participation in community-based events that would benefit from the inclusion of the local school board trustee. Trustee Shuttleworth, would you like to make that motion?
I sure would. Thank you very much.
Trustee Amos, would you like to second that motion?
Yes, please.
Thank you. That motion is now on the floor, and I'm looking for speakers just to make sure that we can go ahead and vote, because I know sometimes somebody sneaks in at the last second. And please cast your vote. Thank you. That passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Moving on in our agenda to committee appointments, report 23183 submitted by the striking committee. And as I am the chair of that committee, I will be passing the gavel to Vice Chair Oliver.
Okay, before you is report 23183 on striking committees. Vice Chair Kohler, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, please. At our last committee, the whole meeting, we took some time to review the appointments and membership positions for trustees for the coming year, and worked very diligently at ensuring that we had full coverage of all committees and that all trustees received some of the appointments and other roles that they wished to have for the year. And before you is what we came to the conclusion of at the end of the meeting. I know you've had the last few days to look this over. I'm hoping I didn't make any errors in the report, but please do let me know if anything doesn't look quite right. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments regarding the striking committee's report? And I trust that everybody checked their name and made sure that they're on the right list. That's great. Okay, so we will put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the striking committee report as outlined in Report 23183. And Trustee Collard, would you like to move that motion?
Yes, please.
And Trustee Gray, would you like to second? Okay. The motion is now up for a vote. Cast your votes, please. All right, and that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I pass the gavel.
Next on our agenda is item 5.0, communication to the board. And we have a couple of reports coming up with Superintendent Nagoy, the 2023-2024 revised budget estimates update, report 23185. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair to all trustees. This is an update on the revised budget for the current year for the trustees in light of the ministry regulation to submit the ministry forms on December the 15th. And with our next board meeting being, I believe it's January the 10th, we just wanted to provide an update as to where we are. Trustees are not required to approve revised budget under all circumstances, but they are required to approve if we are proposing to use more surplus. So if we have a larger deficit than what was approved during the budget time in June. And where we are right now, we're still finalizing all the details because of the quick turnaround between the end of the year and the revised budget. We are expecting to be about 500,000 more in a deficit than what we had in June. So in June, the trustees approved a budget that was 7.2 million deficit within compliance, within our 1% of the provincial allocation, and with an in-year deficit elimination plan. And currently, as a result of lower than projected enrollment and increase to our costs, in particular supply costs, we are expected that we will be using an additional 500,000, still within compliance. So we're just shy of 7.7 million. We still have to do the final review, but we wanted to provide you with an update in terms of what to expect that you will see for approval coming up in January. We do have to submit the ministry forms on December the 15th, but we are allowed to submit an update if there's any changes once the trustees approve the revised budget. There's details in the report in terms of what we're seeing. Mainly the enrollment has decreased by over 500 students from the projection, and it's important to note that we're actually lower in elementary panel than we were the prior year, and a slightly higher in the secondary panel. We just haven't seen the growth come in. In terms of revenue, of course, decrease in enrollment drives most of our funding. So we have seen a decrease in revenues that is offset in part by an increase in interest revenue as a result of higher interest rates and higher cash balances. And on the expense side, expenses have outweighed the increase in revenue, mainly as a result of bringing up the supply staff costing to align with the year-end trends that we've seen for the past year. And with that, I'd be open to any questions from trustees. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bryden.
Just making sure I understand the revenue numbers. We've got net 1.6 million increase, of which 2 million increase in other revenues, 400,000 decrease in GSN funding, But then we've got this other comment about a decrease of 1.1 million in international student fees. Is that netted into the other revenues?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. It's part of other revenues. So as part of the decrease in enrollment is not just pupils of the board within our region, but we've also seen a decrease of 72 international students. So the projection wasn't met in terms of international students as well.
Thank you. Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. In the number of years I've been a trustee, I haven't remembered us being in our estimates of student enrollment out by as large a number as 528. And I'm wondering, is our board tracking where these students that we thought were coming our way have gone, or what are we doing so that we are in a better position going forward next year and have more accurate estimates of our student enrollment?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Gray, and through the chair. We have been a rapid growth board over a number of, I'd say, last 15 years, or probably more. 15 years is the history I have personally within the region. And that has been out of trend through the COVID years as a result of a decrease in immigration, as well as migration of families into our region and the move out from urban areas into rural areas. So the rural boards are seeing more of an increase. So leaving those years aside, we have started to see more of a normal increase in growth in the region. However, it's not as high as we would have expected. And looking at the projections for the next 4 years, so next year actually we're going to expect to see a decline in both panels from this year as well. And then the elementary panel is expected to increase, while the secondary panel is going to decrease. And that's a function of the elementary grades 8 moving into grade 9 is now not as large as it was before. So that's also that entry point that is impacting the secondary panel. So we are flattening in terms of growth, and will slowly pick up in a couple of years. But for the current year and next year, we do have to look at a slight decrease in enrollment, which we haven't seen in a long time.
Thank you. I'm seeing no other questions from trustees. We can move on to report 23184, budget development and timelines. Back to you.
Thank you. And through Chair Caller to all trustees, this is a good segue into planning for the budget for the following year. We've started the process with the senior team and with trustees, subcommittees and discussions all the way back into the September timeframe. So we wanted to start early this year because we have a very challenging year ahead. So as we just talked about, the board being in a position of just shy of 7.7 million deficit, a revised budget for the current year, and that contains an in-year deficit elimination plan, which means that by regulation, we are required to balance the budget next year. So any school board that has a deficit in the current year is required to balance the budget next year, even though we have sufficient reserves to be able to do so over time. We are not allowed to, as the regulation has changed. We require minister's approval if we're not going to balance. So that means we are looking at 7.7 million in terms of finding efficiencies, savings, and reductions. I just wanted to start with maybe a provincial perspective. The ministry also started early with the consultation on education funding, which was, I think it came out in September, was released in September. It was focusing on a couple of areas which aren't main drivers for expecting change. Looking at strengthening some accountability measures, reporting, and looking at a portion of the special education grant. So it's not looking at the full formula. It's more the special incidents portion, which is a claim-based allocation for students with extreme exceptionalities. In response to the funding consultation guide, there were a number of responses from the trustee associations, the Council of Ontario Directors of Education and school business officials, as well as the Board of Trustees. You have submitted a letter with concerns, and those concerns are outlining gaps in the formula that are causing us to have a structural deficit. Essentially, the grants for student needs, or the GSN, has not been keeping up with costs, and our main concerns are in the area of special education, funding allocation, the new transportation funding allocation, benefits, the supply costs trending up, being a centrally negotiated item, and yet the funding is not matching with the costs, and not keeping up with inflation and market pressures in terms of costs for contractual services and maintenance services and repairs. Looking at the 2023 fall financial outlook that was outlined by the government, there's austerity measures that are being looked at in order to reduce the provincial deficit by 2025. That is $5.6 billion of finding savings. So, reading between the tea leaves, I guess, we're not expecting the grants for student needs to have significant changes or significant increases for next year. So that brings me to the board perspective, where we are just talked about the enrollment projections, where we're actually declining slowly, not a big decline, but still we're not growing. And our schools, our staff, our school communities have been used over the last 15 years or so, have been used to a growth culture, adding, having initiatives, investments, doing different things. And that isn't the case this year and next year. And then we're looking at a very slow, steady increase after that. So looking forward to the budget, we have some areas of significant shortfall to the funding and pressures. That includes the special education program, supply costs, the benefits, in particular, the federally mandated enhanced CPP and EI costs that the employer also has to contribute. That's 1%, and that has no funding. For us, that alone is over $7 million across a budget that is 80% made up of compensation. And if that was funded, we wouldn't have this conversation. Transportation funding, the new formula actually for us resulted in a decrease in funding, and temporary accommodations has been the same for over 10 years provincially. It's just reallocated. So it's always shortchanging boards in terms of the needs for portables and keeping up with growth. The report also has timelines for the key dates, and we're starting in terms of next steps. We're starting to work through the various committees and consultation with key stakeholders, and the Special Education Advisory Committee, the SEAC meeting in January. We're going to be presenting on January the 9th. And the Committee of the Whole, we're going to have more of a working discussion with the trustees on January 17th, with a survey coming out late January, beginning February for all stakeholder groups. And be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. Through you to Superintendent Nagoy. So looking at some of the numbers that you shared, and I might be wrong, but it looks like from our normal practice that we will be potentially over $6 million short from what we would be, and that doesn't even include what we already owe as a the shortfall from last year. And so we can't, as I understand it, we can't add on to our shortfall. We have to pay it back. Can we carry another shortfall? No. So that's 7. So it could be like, if we wanted the same budget as we've had in the past, it's like $13 million down because of having to pay and having like $6 million less in funding. Am I wrong? Is that? I'm just trying to get a handle on it, because this is awful. In all of my years as a trustee, I mean, we have been able to serve our students better than I guess, than expected, and done the best we can with the being one of the lowest funded boards in the province. But it looks like now we are coming into austerity, and we are going to have to cut to the bone and not going to be able to support students the way they should be supported, let alone how we want to support them. And I think that I really appreciate your timelines about sharing and the fact that we're starting early. I think we need to, and I know that the Fair Formula or Fix the Finance Committee is working on some type of a timeline in conjunction so that we can also share the information as we get a handle on it. But can you let me know if what my thoughts are wrong? Like, I mean, are we over and owe money?
Through the chair, thank you for that question, Trustee Amos. And your thinking is correct in that 7.7 million this year isn't necessarily just 7.7 million next year. It's not necessarily 13 million, it's not double. So we have a pressure of 7.7 million this year. But if we look into next year, if there's additional pressures in the funding formula, if the decline in enrollment isn't one-on-one with just a decrease to staffing ratios, so you don't have the students, you don't have the class, it's not one-to-one, so you actually have a gap. So different things that may happen, that 7.7 million can be higher. It could be 10. As we have information, we'll continue to work through it. But we do have to eliminate the deficit. So right now we know it's about 7.7 million that we need to eliminate next year. And then anything else that might be over budget next year will have to also be compounded on top.
Can I quickly follow up? Thank you. So through you to Superintendent Goy. So it could be higher than the 7.2, which we carried over from last year. So I'm just struggling to try and get a grip on it. And so basically, if we didn't have that shortfall, we could still be creating a surplus budget no matter what, right?
And for the chair, if I understand, in the past, we've had used the surplus. So we've had a deficit budget using a portion of our accumulated surplus, which was over 80 million at some point, and now it's around 58 million. So we've used a very big chunk in 3 very short years. So we do have to recognize that we can continue to do that. But in the past, we've always allocated on purpose, and we were able to, as a board of trustees, you had the authority to approve a deficit budget using some of that surplus to support the multi-year plan with additional initiatives above and beyond what was funded by the ministry in the GSN. We're not allowed next year. So even though we still have an accumulated surplus, next year, we need to request minister's approval if we're not going to be balancing. So it's going to be an exercise where with the trustees, we're going to be looking at options, and we're starting with efficiencies, and we're starting to look at everything we've done in a growth culture that we can be more efficient about and have savings before we go into reductions.
Thank you very much for the explanation. So we need to tighten our seatbelts even more because we've already thought we had done some of that. So it's just going to be a very painful process.
Trustee Shuttleworth.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Superintendent Nagoy. You speak of the declining enrollment. So I'm just wondering, so again, in the last discussion when you were talking to Trustee Bryden, you talked about international students. So what my question is with this declining enrollment and that we now are no longer seen as a growth budget, are we tracking why we're no longer a growing board? Is it because of population trends? Is it people choosing other programs? Or is it just the way things are going? So why all of a sudden have we gone from a growth board to, I don't want to say stagnant, but a non-growth board?
Thank you for that question, and through the chair to Trustee Shuttleworth. What we see in terms of there's still growth of the population in the region, but there's not as many families with school-aged children. It could be the affordability of housing has significantly changed over the 15 years when families with young kids would move into the area. We are seeing more families that are in a different stage in life where their children have, become adults. So we are not really seeing that same trend coming in terms of yield for a student-aged population. That is one. That could change, of course, depending on the immigration patterns and the policy overall. Ontario does get a fair share of that, and Halton has been a destination for those families. But it could be affordability, and we've seen more the school boards that are outside of the GTA area where there's more affordable in terms of cost of living. We've seen that they are growing. So there's a move out of the urban areas in the last couple of years anyway.
Can I have a follow-up, please? So we're not losing students that are already in our board to other programs. That's kind of where I'm at. I wanted just to make sure that the students that we have now they're staying with us. They're not leaving.
I wouldn't say 100% no, because there's always migration of students between school boards in the same boundary area based on programs and based on other personal preferences. So we are every year gaining and losing some, but that isn't the reason for this decline. And we do follow up and work closely with there's 4 publicly funded school boards in the region between public Catholic, French, and English. So we do work closely to see the trends, and we've seen that growth in the region has been slowing down.
So one more quick one. So then, sorry, they're seeing the same trends that we are?
Yes, the Catholic board I think has seen the trend last year more so. So they have adjusted for this year. We've seen it this year. So even though it may look like they're not dropping because they've adjusted already for last year's reduction, it's not at the same time, but we're seeing the same trend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Limzanov.
Thank you. So first of all, great report. Thank you very much for presenting it. And sort of addressing to what Trustee Shuttleworth was saying. So will the expected reduction in enrollment generally have a positive or negative impact on the financial situation of the board and the student experiences? Seeming that the generally less student population would allow for less budget spending, or would it be the opposite effect due to decreased revenue?
Thank you for that question. Yes, an enrollment decrease is always going to put a pressure on budgets and spending and funding and the program offerings, and being able to be flexible with how many students we can allow in a program necessary that is not at the mandated rate for class ratio. So it's always better to be a growth board, because with growth, you have efficiencies, and those efficiencies and savings allow you to use that funding for instruction and activities that support a student more so than when you're in decline.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your reports this evening, Superintendent Ngoy. Next, we're up to notices of motion, and we have none for this evening. We will move on to 5.3, the Director's Report.
Thank you so much, Chair Collard. Just a few items for you this evening. The first one, of course, is the Calling All 3-Year-Old open houses that we had in all the municipalities across Halton. Was a raving success. And is there anything more cute than seeing 350 families with 3-year-olds exploring and engaging and wanting to, pack their knapsacks and get into schools? It is just exhilarating. So we say thank you to our staff who put this together, to the families who came out, and to everyone who contributed. It was a huge success. We had a Words to Action conference put on by the TUS and LGBTQ plus Rights and Education, Words to Action, that took place at New Street. It was, again, a very exhilarating day. I saw many staff members who expressed that this is perhaps the best conference they've been to. They just felt affirmed. They felt that they were seen, that they were heard, they were supported within the Halton District School Board. And we can say that we saw lots of hugs, joy, tears, laughter, learning. It was all there. Our Human Rights Symposium is taking place on Monday, December the 11th. Our trustees, Alim Janov and Shri Balan, already spoke to this. And so we're looking forward to this Human Rights Symposium, which takes a different flavor this year. And students for us, by us. And so students are taking the lead. They really no longer need us, is what they're telling us. And so we say congratulations to our students who are taking the lead on this. Just one final thing I just want to mention. Don't forget, yes, we have the videos, but you can watch them at your own leisure. We won't watch them tonight. You wanted to see yourself, didn't you? Over the last few weeks, we've had several demonstrations and walkouts in our schools. And, we have made a decision as a board that, we are no longer allowing demonstrations to take place and protest on our school property. They are to be off school property. And I want to make an appeal to families. I made an appeal 2 nights ago in the community meeting, and I want to do so again tonight. I'm asking families and students of the Halton District School Board, if you are planning a protest, please do so outside of school hours. Don't interrupt the school day. I ask you to, families, I appeal to you, if you know students who want to demonstrate, encourage them to do so outside of outside of our school hours. There are lots of students in our schools. We want to make sure that everyone feels safe, feel that they're valued, that they belong, and that they can come to school and feel a sense of safety and security. And so I'm appealing to all the families and to the students to ensure that for the safety, well-being, belonging, respect of all, that we do so outside of the school hours. That's my appeal to you, and with that I conclude.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Director Ennis this evening? Trustee Sherballen.
Thank you for the report, Director Ennis, and your, of course, funny remarks as always. I just wanted to ask for clarification because I have been hearing some discourse in the student community regarding this decision regarding protests and walkouts, and I wanted to make the clarification that if protests are to happen outside of school hours and perhaps start and congregate on school property and go out, would that not be okay as per these changes?
So the intent of the change is that we don't want any sort of formulation of the protest of any kind happening on school property. We want students to exit the school property. But further to that, I'm appealing to students not to even do it during the school day. Let's focus on our academics and the work that we are charged to do, and make different plans to organize this outside of school hours. The protests and the demonstrations, they're causing rifts and polarization within our school communities and within our communities at large. And it's something that I don't want to see further or continued. And I'm appealing that we, as student leaders, I'm asking you not to do it.
Did you have a follow-up? Thank you very much. Moving on to communications from the chair, I'm just going to reiterate an announcement I made at the start of this evening's meeting. Trustees will be looking at a motion to change the start time of our public session to 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock. And I'm making this announcement now, even though the motion won't be coming until January. as an advisory, that if this motion is passed, that would mean that the public gallery will open at 6 o'clock, and we wouldn't want anyone to miss any portion of the meeting because they were not aware of the change. So just be aware that that motion is coming. For trustees' consideration, the board meeting that was normally scheduled for the 20th of December has been canceled due to lack of items, and we have no committee of the whole for this month. Our next meeting will be on January the 10th. If you have items for consideration for that agenda, please submit them to Manager Khan by the 18th of December. As you know, there is quite an extensive holiday period, and she requires to have some work time to put the agenda together. So if you could please have those in by the 18th, that would be wonderful. The last thing that I wanted to mention was that there will be governance training for trustees and the senior administrative team on February 28th, which is a Wednesday. It was the first Wednesday that the facilitator of that governance training was available, and the Trustees Professional Development Standing Committee has been made aware of this plan and is putting it in their agenda. Now moving on to committee updates. Do we have committee updates for this evening? Seeing none, we will move on into the OPSPA update. Do we have an OPSPA update for public session? And I believe we do.
Trustee Gray and I keep looking at each other going, you. We did have, last weekend was the Ontario Public School Board Association's Executive Committee meeting on a Saturday, really followed by Board of Directors on Monday, followed by the OPSPA Advocacy Day. Trustee Gray and I spent quite a bit of time on the Monday. We ended up meeting with 4 MPPs or their parliamentary assistants, 2 within Queen's Park and 2 off-site. It was a long but productive day. There was a great deal that was discussed. We found very willing and engaging audiences in all of the people that we were scheduled to speak to. And I don't want to hog the entire thing. I will throw to Trustee Gray to conclude.
Thank you very much. We were very pleased to have a commitment from one of the MPPs, MPP Ted or not, to arrange a future meeting of MPPs across Halton Region to look at different issues affecting education in particular, and mostly looking at the funding of education. So the commitments were great. We've got some follow-up to do with the individuals that we met with, but we're looking for a really great opportunity to present our case and our needs in education in the new year. So stay tuned for more information.
If I may conclude, I would also like to send a huge thanks and respect to our student trustee. I know that was a busy day for you. You had personal commitments with interviews and things like that. So the time that you took, and I understand that you really wowed them at Queen's Park, and you got to speak with Minister Lecce, which is more than the rest of us mere mortals got to do. So thank you so much for doing that. I know it came at a busy time for you, and I hope you found it worthwhile. And all the feedback I've heard has been incredibly positive. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone who was able to attend that special day. Are there any questions for Trustee Daniele, Gray, or Schreballen? And seeing none, we will move on to trustee questions and comments. Trustee Amos.
Sorry, you're a little late on the push the button. It was more an acknowledgement for Trustee Daniele, Schreballen, and Gray. Thank you for sharing the concerns of the Halton District School Board with the ministers, because you had the opportunity to actually have a dialogue, which is more than a lot of us have that opportunity. And thank you for so eloquently sharing the concerns of our board, because as we all know, we have some significant concerns, especially around financials. So thank you.
And I can certainly share with you that every single person we spoke to heard about Halton being the second lowest funded school board in the province, and that needs to change. So that's part of the homework we need to do, is to follow up with that information, because many of them did request more information.
Thank you. Moving on to Trustee Zhang.
Thank you, Chair. So the first today I'd like to discuss a data sheet about the suspension and expulsion date. So can I use several number of this in this data sheet? So, because for the privacy protection. This one?
I am unable to see what you're referencing, Trustee
It would
Zhang.
depend on what your question is. Perhaps you can frame the question and then we can decide whether or not it belongs in public session.
You can ask the question.
Okay, so I like to read the local news. So this is also from Inside Halton. So the title is, thank you, Marginalized Students Overrepresented in Halton District School Board Suspension Stats. So this is the local news. And in this news, it reads, the rate of disproportion among students identifying as Black, Indigenous, gender diverse, sexually diverse, or special needs, however, was not included in the documents presented to trustees at the October 18 board meeting. So this is from the news, local news. And in the report, actually, we at that time, we don't have any detailed data. So after that, we received some data. So I checked the data. The surprise thing is, for example, in the gender identity group, we have the boy group, girl group, and the gender diverse group. From this news and in the report, in the suspension report, it says we have ongoing challenge about the overrepresentation of the gender identity or sexually orientation group. But in this data sheet, the gender diverse, the index is 1.09. Actually, this is just the average. It's not above. Because in this group, there's a girl, boy, and a gender diverse. The overrepresented group is boy. Boy, the index is 1.49. So based on this data sheet, actually this report in our report is not accurate. If the public doesn't see the data and only see the conclusion from the report, so some misleading information will be spread in the community. And, some other source or other research groups, when they do the research, they can do a citation to our report, and it will consider our school board has this certain issues. Actually, it doesn't exist. That's why, if from the information route, the conclusion in our report is not accurate. I'm sorry,
Trustee Zhang, you have used your 3 minutes. Do you have a question?
So I will ask to use the actual data to make a correction in the report.
Thank you so much, Trustee Zhang. I'm going to ask Superintendent Fowler if she would like to respond.
Yes, thank you. The data that was actually presented at the committee of the whole meeting following that initial meeting, I will definitely take back the one specific query with regards to gender diverse students being overrepresented based on the data that Trustee Zhang has presented tonight. But all other data that was in the report does indeed speak to an overrepresentation. So I will look back at the report. Happy to bring that back to the team. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Fowler. Trustee or Vice Chair Oliver.
Through you, Chair, I have a question of clarification for Trustee Zhang. The report you're referring to, is that our staff report, or is this a media news release, a media spin on what they've heard?
So the media, actually, this is from our the board meeting report. So let me find, this is a,
But the commentary that you were referring to, did that come from media or our
no,
report?
actually, this is the media used the statement from our report. So this is a report which reads, we recognize the ongoing work we have to do to address the disproportionate outcome for our students who identify as Black, Indigenous, gender diverse, sexual diverse, and the students with IEPs. So this is from our report.
Director Ennis.
Thank you so much, Chair Collard. So to Trustee Zhang, we do know, and the data does support, that there is a disproportionality among the groups that you have cited in terms of suspensions, and it's up to us to respond with the appropriate measures that is going to reduce or eliminate that disproportionality and that disparity. It's well established. Not just in the Halton District School Board, but right across the province, and indeed the country in many respects. The disproportionality for Indigenous people is well established. For Black families, well established. For members of the 2S LGBTQ plus, well established. This goes beyond just school data. This is a societal issue. There's a disproportionality and disparity in how these groups have been treated historically and presently that we need to acknowledge is a reality that we need to address. And I believe that our researcher, Dr. Bishalia, also sent a response to some of these questions. I would also ask that we refer to those as well.
Vice Chair Oliver, do you have anything else you wanted to say on this topic?
No, thank you.
Trustee Zhang, closing comments? Seeing no other speakers on the list and that our agenda has been exhausted, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.